Okay, so we're diving into this AI art thing, right? And I gotta say, the stuff you dug up, it's wild. I mean, AI art, I figured that was like a last Tuesday kind of thing, not something with actual history.
It's funny how we think that, isn't it? Like tech just pops out of nowhere, but the idea of machines being creative, ancient history, my friend.
No kidding. I mean, we're talking ancient Greece here, those myths about automatons, basically robots making art. Crazy. Didn't one of those myths say a guy, Daedalus, I think, built statues that could, like, move on their own? Man, if statues could spill the tea.
It really makes you wonder, right, about what people back then considered art if they believed machines could make it. I mean, swap out statue for algorithm, and we're basically having the same arguments today, just with fancier tools.
For real, it's like these big questions about creativity, they just keep coming back around. Okay, but before we go all philosophy on this, there was some seriously cool stuff happening even before the whole digital art scene, yeah? Like in the 1960s, right? Wasn't there a project called Aaron?
Harold Cohen's masterpiece. And get this, Aaron didn't just mess around with pixels. We're talking actual paint, brushes, the whole shebang, chosen by the AI itself.
Wait, hold up. A robot picking up a paintbrush. That's next level.
It was groundbreaking. Cohen used this really advanced, for the time, rule-based programming. So Aaron wasn't just following orders, it was actually making choices, like an artist, based on those rules.
So not just some fancy paint by numbers then. This thing was legit making artistic decisions. Someone back then must lost their mind.
Oh, definitely ruffled some feathers. I mean, could you imagine seeing a machine create art for real back then? It was like, hold on, can a hunk of metal be an artist now? Those questions, they're still swirling around today, just amplified.
Makes you think for sure.
Yeah.
But to get the full picture, we got to rewind a bit, yeah. Because artificial intelligence, back in the day, that's not Siri or self-driving cars, right?
Right on. To really grasp what those early AI art pioneers were doing, we got to go back to AI's origin story. And that story starts, well, officially at least, with a guy named Alan Turing.
Oh, Turing. Mr. Can Machines Think. Wasn't he the one with the whole test where if a computer could fool you into thinking it was human, bam, it's basically thinking? Still blows my mind. But how's that connect to art specifically?
So Turing writes this super influential paper in 1950, right? Computing Machinery and Intelligence. And this, along with a big ol' workshop at Dartmouth a few years later, boom, artificial intelligence is born. But here's the thing. It wasn't just about math problems or beating humans at chess. AI, from the get-go, was about replicating what makes us human, and creativity, that's a biggie.
So those early AI artists, like the Aaron Project, they weren't just playing with the new tech, they were wrestling with some heavy questions. What's intelligence? What's creativity? What does it even mean to be human if a machine's holding the paintbrush? Deep stuff.
Deep is an understatement. And this is where things get even more interesting, because we're about to enter the era of deep learning and how it totally changed the game for AI art techniques.
Oh, now we're talking deep learning. But before we get lost in the weeds, for those of us who don't speak fluent algorithm, give us the breakdown. What is deep learning exactly?
Imagine, right, a computer program that doesn't just follow orders, but learns from mountains of data, teaching itself to see patterns, relationships, all that. And then it uses that knowledge to make something totally new, not your grandpa's rule-based system anymore.
Okay, so less following the recipe.
Yeah.
More like AI going full-on Iron Chef in the art studio.
Got it.
But hit me with an art world example. How did this deep learning thing actually change things?
Remember those mesmerizing fractal screensavers back in the 90s? Electric Sheep, this guy Scott Droz created. That was early deep learning in action.
Oh man, those were hypnotizing. I used to get lost in those fractals, but those still felt kind of rule-based, you know?
Yeah.
Intricate, sure, but still following a set path. How did deep learning go beyond that?
Good ear. Those early experiments were visually cool, but they were still bound by math, predetermined stuff. Deep learning blew that wide open. And the game changer, JANES, Generative Adversarial Networks. Mid-2010s, they hit the scene.
JANS. Now, those I've heard of. They're everywhere in the AI art world now. Though, to be honest, the how it works part still makes my brain do backflips. Break it down for us non-coders, will ya?
Imagine two AI systems, right? But they're not buddies, they're rivals. The first one, the generator, its job is to make images that look like, let's say, famous Renaissance paintings. The other AI, the discriminator, its whole deal is to spot the fakes.
So it's like an art forgery game, with AI playing both sides, the forger and the critic.
You got it. And the more they duke it out, the better they both get. The generator becomes a master forger, and the discriminator, well, it could spot a fake Mona Lisa a mile away.
And that's how we get those AI portraits that look like they belong in a museum. Remember that auction a few years back, Christie's? AI art went for big bucks, like serious money. Felt like that's when AI art really went mainstream.
It was a turning point for sure. Suddenly everyone was paying attention. But what really launched things into hyperspace, it's the whole text-to-image revolution. Now you don't need to be a coding wizard to make AI art. Just type what you want and bam, the AI delivers.
Right. DALL-E, Stable Diffusion, Midjourney, these are like the rock stars now.
Yeah.
And they're trained on like mountains of data, right?
Mm.
Words and pictures, so they make these crazy connections between what we say and what we see.
Exactly. It's wild, isn't it? And here's the thing. Even if you've never messed around with one of these tools, you've seen their work. Online, everywhere. Whimsical, photorealistic, you name it, it's out there. We're swimming in AI art, whether we realize it or not.
Which is both super cool and kinda, I don't know, a little freaky. Like anyone can be an artist now, which is amazing. But what does that mean for art, for artists, for all of us?
The million-dollar question, right. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. We're talking copyright chaos, what's real, what's fake, the future of creativity itself. This AI art thing, it's a Pandora's box, and we're just getting started. It's a wild west out there, that's for sure, and we're all just trying to figure out the rules of the game as we go.
Exactly. And with AI art, the stakes are high. I mean, we're talking about livelihoods, artistic integrity, the very definition of creativity. Where do we even begin to unpack all of this?
Well, I think a good place to start is with the legal quagmire that is copyright law. Because if an AI generates a piece of art, the big question becomes who actually owns it? Is it the AI itself? The person who typed in the prompt? The company that created the AI? Nobody knows.
It's like trying to fit a square peg into a round hole.
Yeah.
Our current copyright laws were designed for a world where humans were the sole creators. AI throws a wrench in the whole system.
Right. And just to complicate matters further, the U.S. Copyright Office, they've come out and said that works created solely by artificial intelligence with zero human input can't be copyrighted.
So let me get this straight. If nobody owns the copyright to an AI-generated image, does that mean anyone can just use it however they want? What about the artists whose actual work was fed into the AI to create the darn thing in the first place?
Those are the million-dollar questions that courts are wrestling with right now, and we're seeing some pretty significant legal battles popping up. Remember that lawsuit last year, the one against the company behind Stable Diffusion?
Yeah, that was a big one. A bunch of artists ganging up, saying, hey, you're using our art without permission. What was the gist of their argument?
Basically, they claimed that using billions of images scraped from the internet, many of them protected under copyright to train their AI, was basically stealing intellectual property. They compared it to, imagine creating a music program that you trained on every single copyrighted song ever written.
Ooh, yeah. That's going to ruffle some feathers. They'd be singing a different tune in court.
Yeah.
But seriously, it brings up this huge gray area. What's fair use when it comes to AI? If I wrote a book by feeding every novel ever written into an AI, something tells me my publisher wouldn't be thrilled.
Exactly. It's a very fine and very blurry line. And the decisions made in cases like this are going to have massive repercussions. I mean, this is shaping how copyright law adapts to this whole new reality. We're in uncharted territory, and it's fascinating and terrifying all at the same time.
Talk about a cliffhanger. Okay, but let's zoom out from the legal stuff for a second and think of the human side of all this. For artists, the people who have poured their hearts and souls into honing their craft, what does AI art mean for them?
It's a question that keeps a lot of artists up at night, I bet. There's this fear, right, that AI is going to make human creativity obsolete. Like, why hire an artist when you can just have a machine spit out something just as good, if not better, for a fraction of the cost? And that could lead to artists, actual people, losing their livelihoods. It's a valid fear.
Totally. And it's not just artists, right? I mean, we've seen companies using AI to generate marketing materials, to write articles, heck, even compose music. Jobs that used to be the domain of creative people.
Absolutely. The potential for job displacement in the creative fields, that's a real concern. And we need to be having some tough conversations about how to deal with that, but I don't think it has to be all doom and gloom.
Right. Doesn't have to be humans versus machines, right? What if, instead of replacing artists, AI became a tool, a collaborator even? Like, imagine you could get past creative blocks with the help of AI, or experiment with new mediums in ways you never could before.
Now you're speaking my language. That's what gets me excited about all of this. We're already seeing artists doing exactly that, weaving AI into their creative process, generating ideas, manipulating images in seconds, what would take hours by hand. It's mind-blowing.
It's like having a superpowered artistic sidekick who just gets you.
For real. And think about all the tedious, repetitive parts of the creative process. Imagine AI taking those off your plate. That frees up artists to focus on the good stuff, the emotions, the concepts, the things that make art human.
Kind of like what happened with photography back in the day, right? When it first came out, some painters were like, that's it, we're doomed. But instead of killing painting, photography pushed it in new directions. It sparked movements like Impressionism and abstract expressionism. Maybe AI art could be that spark for a whole new era of creativity.
Love that analogy. Just like photography gave us a new way of seeing the world, AI art is like this new lens to view creativity itself. It's pushing those boundaries of what's possible.
It's expanding how we even define art in the first place. But it's not just the art world that's feeling the tremors, is it? I mean, AI art is popping up everywhere, right?
Oh yeah, we're just getting started. Film, music, fashion, architecture. AI is shaking things up in every corner of the creative world, even our everyday lives.
I mean, come on. AI-generated special effects that look more real than real life. Musicians using AI to make music unlike anything we've ever heard before. There was even that instance where they used AI to create art in the style of an artist who had passed away. Mind-blowing stuff.
And a little bit eerie, right? It's like this weird blend of homage and, I don't know, almost like a digital seance. Makes you question everything.
Totally. And it's not just music either. The fashion world is going crazy for AI, creating these wild designs and virtual fashion shows that are straight out of a sci-fi movie.
It's fashion on fast forward. Designers using AI to whip up new fabrics, personalized clothing lines. Forget runway models. We're talking avatars strutting their stuff in digital spaces.
It's like stepping into the future, one AI-designed outfit at a time. But we're running out of time on this part, and I don't want to cut you off. We've got so much more to cover. It's crazy, right? We started talking about AI art, and suddenly we're neck deep in copyright law, the ethics of bringing back dead artists, and what the heck even is creativity anymore?
It's a rabbit hole, this AI art thing, that seems to go deeper the further you go, and it connects to everything, the law, our own ideas about what's real and what's fake. It even makes you question what it means to be human when machines are making art.
No kidding. But before we get too existential on everyone, we were about to dive into some real-world examples of this stuff. How AI art is actually being used out there in the wild.
Yeah.
You mentioned film, music, even architecture.
Yeah, let's jump right into the deep end. We were talking about those AI-generated special effects in movies, remember? They're getting so good, it's hard to tell what's real and what's pixels anymore. But then it's like, okay, are we going to have AI animators putting people out of work?
Yeah, that's the double-edged sword, right? It's like having this amazing new tool, but then you got to ask, at what cost? And it's not just happening in film either. Music, too. I read about this musician who used AI to make an entire album. Not just a song or two, a whole album.
And even wilder, remember that case where they used AI to create music in the style of a musician who's no longer with us? That one really got people talking. I mean, is that cool, creepy, disrespectful? Nobody's quite sure what to make of it yet.
Yeah, it's like this weird gray area between honoring someone's legacy and, I don't know, kind of stealing from the grave almost.
Yeah.
And it's not just music either. The fashion world, they're all over this AI art thing, right?
Totally. They're using AI to design clothes, fabrics, even entire virtual fashion shows. Forget models on a catwalk. We've got avatars strutting their stuff in cyberspace. It's wild.
Talk about a fashion-forward future. So we've got movies, music, fashion. What about architecture? Are we going to be living in AI-designed houses anytime soon?
Don't be surprised. Architects are already using AI to design buildings. And not just like your average house either. We're talking about whole cityscapes. AI can take all this data about climate, population, even people's aesthetic preferences, and use it to design buildings and cities that are functional, beautiful, even sustainable. It's pretty mind-blowing.
It really is amazing to think about, isn't it? But even with all these incredible things AI art can do, we got to remember, this tech is still a toddler, basically. We're just starting to see what it can do, and there are bound to be some growing pains along the way.
Totally agree. It's exciting, don't get me wrong, but we got to be smart about it. We got to keep asking those tough questions about who owns what, what's authentic, and how do we make sure AI lifts up human creativity, not squashes it. And most importantly, we got to keep talking about it, keep the conversation going.
Because it's not just about the art at the end of the day, right?
Yeah.
It's about how this technology is going to change our world, and we got to make sure it changes for the better. And on that note, to our listeners, especially the one who suggested we do this deep dive, thank you. This has been an incredible journey.
And remember, this conversation is just getting started. As AI art keeps evolving, we need everyone's voices, everyone's ideas to help steer it in the right direction. So keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep creating, because the most amazing stuff is still yet to come.